Could we forget?
We'll never forget.
Hello and welcome to News and Views with the award-winning EV Café. 30 minutes of what's happening in sustainable transport with expert analysis from the EV Café crew. Brought to you this week in partnership with Zaptec, providing leading-edge green tech chargers. Now then, today's opinions on the stick. We've got Pablo. He's got your Christmas jumper on, mate.
I don't think he's washed it since Wednesday.
Oh dear.
I don't watched it ever.
So bad. It's so gross, but okay.
And Sarah, you're sporting some white
I'm
number.
trying to be really festive. I even put a little bow in, and I've called myself Mrs. Elf on my StreamYard.
Oh, that's lovely. And Samuel, something very special from you today.
Oh, this is my Christmas jumper, which isn't this T-shirt from the do, but it's a little grid serve number for my good friend and boss, Toddington Harper.
So good.
Made him a Tesla sleigh next to his chargers for him, so he liked that.
Wow, and we'll be raffling that off later in the show. Anyway, we better get on with the news. So, grab a cuppa. Have we all got a cuppa? Oh, look at the state of mine. That's been on the go since 3 this morning. Right, grab a cuppa. I've got a mince pie. Anybody else?
I just am a pie, the amount of mince pies I've eaten.
Half-eaten bacon sandwich count?
Oh, God.
Mm.
So bad.
John, while you finish your mouthful, can I just do one quick thing? Can I give a shout out to a couple of people who are upstairs, who are my two boys, 8 and 11, Archie and Henry, who have never watched this show and are on YouTube upstairs listening in. So this will be the first time in their lives they've been shouted out live on the internet. So I know they're going to get bored in about 30 seconds' time. So I thought if I bang it in now, they'll actually listen to it.
And what are their names, Sam? Can we get their names? Is that cool?
Oh, I can't remember. I did say Archie and Henry.
Hey,
Archie and Henry.
Woohoo! Good to see you.
Good morning. Welcome. Hope you've got drinkies and maybe a mince pie or a bar of chocolates. And if Daddy could take you out later and spend £50 on each of you, just on sundry items, that would be marvellous. Great.
Yes.
So grab a cuppa and plug into what's been happening in clean transport this week. And we've got coming up government funding awarded to a project to prove that EVs are assets to the grid, like we didn't know. EVs are available to rent for €100 a month in France. This will get Sam going. A hydrogen-powered EV charger, which has been launched at a Scottish motorway service area. The difference in EV maintenance costs that's been exposed with tyres, the main driver of cost, and the most popular electric cars of 2023 globally. Have a little think about what that might contain. But up first, and Paul, if you could prepare yourself for this, because I think there might be a little bit of information you have on this that we don't. A consortium of British companies has secured £1,344,552. How the government decided that, I will never know. However, in government funding to explore how electricity stored in electric vehicle batteries can be used to smooth out peaks in supply and demand on the UK's electricity grid. 3TI, the UK's leading designer, installer, funder and operator of solar car parks, is leading the new project funded by the Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero, delivered by Innovate UK. The project is setting out to integrate bidirectional DC charging and the associated power management systems into something called Papilio 3, a pop-up solar car park and EV charging hub. The V2X Fast Hub project will be a watershed moment for future energy security, providing a clear pathway to help resolve the issue of intermittent supply from renewables by using EV batteries as grid assets. Now, as I mentioned, Paul, you went to Silverstone this week to find out more. What did you discover?
Well, I've been very fortunate in that I've been working on a couple of investor webinars as well. So hearing Tim Evans, the CEO and founder of the company, and Mark Potter, expound this vision of they weren't actually available to talk, or allowed to talk about it, much like Sam couldn't talk about his electric freightway for so long because the money it was all under embargo. But anyway, it's been released this Wednesday, and so basically the Papilio 3 is just a drop-in charging sort of hub in effect. It made from a container. In fact, they make 8 from one container these days. So they're developing the process, and they're fast growing. But what Mark Potter really has kind of designed and built is this microgrid system where you can drop it in, you can power up batteries from the grid, from solar, from all of that sort of stuff, and then connect, say, 10, 100 kilowatt hour batteries in cars or vans or trucks, probably not trucks, but in cars or vans, and then send that energy back to the grid on demand. So demand side response, which is a revenue earner for the people that are plugged in or connected. And they can do that not only locally, but they can do it all over the country, connecting all the different PPO3s to one single demand side response. It's really impressive, and it'll be great to see how the data that comes from this test really helps shape the future of the market.
And Sam,
Can I ask a
forgive
question?
me.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
go on.
I was going to ask you about GridServe, because as far as I understand, you're generating renewables, batteries, and charging. How is it different? I'm missing something here.
I don't think it's necessarily different. I mean, we've been doing battery storage and solar at Braintree for 3 years now, so it's the same principle, and using batteries to trade on the grid. So it's a very similar principle. The question I have for Paul is, and I'm a massive fan of V2X, V2G. I think it's essential that every vehicle that's on our driveways in the future is going to be able to be bidirectional, because it's another colossal power station opportunity. But no vehicles are V2G yet, apart from the Nissan Leaf. So how do they export the energy from vehicles that don't exist yet?
So it's V2X. So it's all there are a number of vehicles that are already V2L, I believe.
That's
so
the 3-pin 13 amp socket, though, isn't it? So that's not going to do anything.
So I mean, to be honest, I'm not the technical expert. What I do know is that the government have looked at this project. I know Claire Miller, who is a particular exponent and an expert in this, is also involved somewhere along the way. And they've worked out a way of being able to put the energy into the batteries and then send it back to the grid. So I don't know the technical stuff, to be quite truthful. But the difference here is that it's about the vehicles plugging in. So you don't need a big megawatt of battery sitting in a place that is otherwise inactive. It is all about the vehicles that themselves, with their combined energy, being able to send energy back to the grid. And you can opt in and opt out, and there'll be various different management tools that ensure everybody's got enough energy to carry on about their day as and when they need to. It's all about that 95% of dwell time where the vehicle's not moving. So that's the opportunity.
If anyone in the comments can explain how the vehicle energy gets from the vehicle back to the batteries, I'd love to know, because I don't know the answer, and I'd be fascinated to know how.
Yeah, but Mark Potter might be able to help us with that, but I will find an answer.
Thanks, Paul. And Sarah, this is really important in terms of rural locations where you're creating renewable energy into batteries, into vehicles, and ultimately then have that flexibility to be able to move that energy around in any way you choose. You'd love that kind of thing, surely.
Indeed. But also it works remarkably well for private fleet hub sites, so you can benefit from energy arbitrage as well, and be in command of your own energy. And actually 3TI, I think, got an award at Transport and Energy this November. So congrats to them for sort of pushing through. I must say there's something really strange going on in Suffolk. There's lots of very cool people there. Matthew Ling, and also I believe our beloved Linda Grave is over that way, and of course Claire Miller, who is the ISO 15118 queen, who knows everything there is to know about that bi-directional protocol.
Golly, and if you don't know what ISO 15118 is, what are you doing here?
What are you even doing? You should have asked for that for Christmas. I'll take the full pieces, please.
Now let's say hello to a few people. We'll give you all a name check. Paul O'Brien, Matthew Ling, Ben McDonald, Ashley Bannister, Evie Bino. No idea who you are, but hello, mate. Steve Hamer. Big shout out to Steve Hamer. Had an operation this week. He's on the mend, doing well. Well done, my friend. Laura Huswick, Wilts, Dev Chakravarti, Gemma Lovett from Barbados, Marvin Samuels, Alex Hansford, David Bushnell, Ross Morgans, Sarah Gray. I love a bit of Sarah Gray. Gary Comerford. Good morning, Napoleon. Are you well? Bonjour. Where are we? Oh, now behave yourselves. Giuliano Fontanelli.
What a great name.
Wow, thank you for that one, springing that on me. Give me notice next time you turn up. George Thurman, hello, George. Richard Tyler, Evie Beano's having a lot to say today. Hugh Maguire, Rob Dustin, Chris Demetriou, our friend from Islington.
Happy
Marvellous.
birthday. Happy
Indeed.
birthday, Chris.
He's 107 and doesn't look a day over it. David Watts, Lloyd Allen from Bristol. Lovely to see you. Ian Thompson, you're a superstar because you were on our webinar. Dean Hedge, is it snowing up there, my friend? 6 foot, what are you, 6, 7?
You can talk.
Who else? Yeah, I'm 6'7" around the waist. Karen Moole from stop it, Europe Car. Thank you all, bless you, for joining us on this hour penultimate news broadcast. We've got one next week, 29th of December, which will be a review of the 5 biggest stories of the year. If you think you've got a story that we should have covered, or indeed we did cover, but you want to see again or talk about next week, then let us know in the chat. Let's move on. People in France will be able to lease electric vehicles for just €100 per month under a new scheme launched by President Emmanuel Macron. The first vehicles will be delivered in January 2024, with President Macron stating that the scheme formed part of his plans to create écologie à la française, which is a French-style eco-friendliness. He said the aim is to help you obtain electric vehicles that are produced in our country instead. So rather than buying foreign, buy French. Interesting notion, and perhaps one we should think about. As you know, we want to continue to reduce our CO2 emissions, and one of the things we're going to do is replace our combustion engine vehicles with electric vehicles. Now, Paris has had such a scheme before. 2011, there was something called Autolib, where you could hire a car for a journey, an hour, as long as you wanted it. And sadly, it closed in 2018 after mounting debts were identified and Paris withdrew its support. This was the Bolloré Group. What makes you think, Sarah, that this might work this time around?
Oh, that price point is hard to fathom. I don't know how they've managed that, to be honest. But
Must
what
be
you
state
referenced there-
subsidised.
Well, I suspect so. I suspect they've learned that air quality is going to cost them much more in the longer term. But car clubs is the thing you referenced earlier, and back in 2018, there just weren't enough places to drop the car off with charge points installed. So I think that's why that failed. So I've got high hopes for this one. And France has long done these innovative schemes. We covered on the EV Café lunchtime webinar once the lorry that has the electric lorry that has the electric delivery bikes within it. Can't remember who ran that scheme. But hats off to them. I wish them luck with it. It's about getting the communication out there to the public, though, that this is a much more affordable way to run a vehicle, as in not actually own one at all.
Indeed. Yeah.
That was Volta. And
yes, it was.
So
yeah, well remembered.
Instance, and Volta, obviously, on their way back. But yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, what I think is interesting about this article, and unlike the Bolloré efforts of old, which was effectively a bit of a rubbish quadricycle which didn't go very far, the vehicles actually in this are, Megane's Twingos, Scenics, even Citroen 208s, Citroen EC4s, Peugeot 208s, and I think Model Ys even potentially. So this time around, it must be subsidised because these vehicles are reasonably high value, but they're proper vehicles. They do proper distances, proper miles. They're not just quadricycles; they're proper vehicles. And so, hopefully, that might be the differentiator between this and other schemes that have been around, which go for the low-cost vehicle, but no one wants to use them. Whereas this time around, it seems different. So maybe that might be the differentiator.
Did you know? Little-known fact here is that Autolib and Europe Car ended up in court over the name Autolib. Autolib and Autoliberté. Autoliberté was the Europe Car name for car hire in France. They took Autolib to court, won their case that they had a trademark on the name, but then didn't enforce it and said, it's all right, Autolib, you can carry on calling yourselves that, providing you pass the ownership of the name to the Parisian authorities and you don't own it yourself.
Wow.
So good old Europe Car. There you go, little known fact. Sorry, Paul, you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, we've recently seen, and there was a lot of fuss about this here in the UK, the Maxus T90 has been circulated at prices of around 100, well, actually as low as £99 a month. on a 2-year lease for, I think it's 6,000 miles a year, but even £127 a month for a 10,000 mile lease. So that really got people kind of like, oh wow, that's really competitive. And then that's obviously a lease. It's slightly different than renting, but certainly got people thinking, oh, I can have one of those. Yeah, I can make that work. 200 miles, all that good stuff. It suddenly. So it does seem that cost might be a real trigger for the transition.
Absolutely. Now then, let's see if Sam froths at this one.
Yeah.
Cairn Lodge Services have introduced the UK's first hydrogen-powered electric charge points. According to the company, which is part of the Westmoreland family, this marks the first of its kind deployment of a hydrogen-powered generator connected to EV chargers at a UK service station to accelerate the rollout of EV charging infrastructure. The services are located on the A74M in Lanarkshire, good old Scotland, Hoots, Mon and all that stuff. Cairn Lodge Services, a family-run motorway services business renowned for its commitment to quality service and sustainability, says it's taken a proactive step to bridge the energy grid gap by using hydrogen power where sufficient grid connection and capacity are some way off. It's not a permanent fix, it's a bridge. It's, I think, progress. And did we touch on this last week, Sam? It's okay to use hydrogen where there isn't grid capacity in the short term. Is that kind of your view?
I mean, providing it's from generated renewable sources of how that hydrogen's created, and someone's got to pay for it, as always. And this, Westmoreland are fantastic. They're one of our partners at Grid Service, so I'm not going to knock this particularly hard. But it's if it works, it works. I mean, there is a form in Scotland of hydrogen projects not seeing the light of day, unfortunately, because it's not commercially viable, which is the other critical factor to all of this. If it has the uptake that it needs, then great, and as you said, with green energy, then that's all good news. But hydrogen filling stations are in decline, not an increase, despite this news. So it's not an option that people are particularly taking up. But we'll see. Maybe there's some milk round routes that certain companies are able to afford to utilize this filling station as part of it. But it's frighteningly niche, but I suppose if someone's willing to pay for it, then it's worth trying. But it's not something I would invest my money in, no. Not you ask.
It goes back to your mantra, Sam and Paul. We might pick up on this: right charger, right place, right time. If you can't get the right charger in the right place because the energy's not there, perhaps this is a solution.
I think for me, what we're seeing is. So there's a company called L Charge that are effectively charging vehicles on the roadside overnight, and they can use either CNG or hydrogen, and they can charge like at a speed of 120 kilowatts off the back of a van, and do that maybe 10, maybe 20 times. I forget the number, but it's a lot of times a night. And it provides a solution. Whilst the solution is not ideal, and you've got to get, as Sam points out, renewable energy, so hydrogen, it's all about reducing the overall impact of emissions, isn't it? And finding ways to facilitate. We know that Chris had to, doing his last leg of the Antarctic journey, had to have a hybrid solution of solar and fueled power. So it's about getting that balance right and making the steps and helping us get stepping stones to where the ideal is. And so I don't think it's ideal. It would be better, but in the meantime, if we can get, as Sam says, renewable energy, it certainly works out.
It is at least in the right place, though. I mean, just yesterday, that map announced that the motorway services is the most popular public charging location, and therefore Grid Serve is the most popular charging location. So if they're going to put something anywhere, then it should really be at a service station at least, because that's clearly where the greatest demand is.
Quick last question. Do you want an answer to your question, Sam? Because I can get him on the how do we get the energy out of the vehicles?
I would, yes. I didn't ask it for fun. I'd love to know the answer. I mean, we've seen a couple of comments here on the section, and as far as people are aware, there is no way of exporting the energy from the vehicles to the battery. So that's something I'm just curious about. It might be that it possibly is an opportunity of a project that's designed for when the CCS connector and technology enables that. But of course, none of the vehicles on the road today, apart from Nissan Leafs, can utilize it. So
Paul's on the case.
Whilst you do that, you
right.
talk story.
So we go live now to Paul Kirby, who's phoning to Mike Potter, I suspect, Chief Technology Officer at 3TI, to find out what's going on, because he's got everybody in his little black book. Sarah, Paul mentioned Chris because he's on first name terms with the great polar explorer, Chris Ramsey. We had some great news Friday last week that came through, I think, over the weekend about Chris Ramsey and the journey he's done from the North Pole to the South Pole. Tell us about that.
Yeah, what a team. Not only was it the first ever vehicle attempt, it was in fact the first EV. So that's just history in the making. We're so proud to be part of his friendship circle and ecosystem and wish them well. It's just such an amazing feat. Not the footage across Instagram and others really showed how much emotion they put into that and how hard they worked to make that happen, just to prove that it can be done. But it did rely heavily on their self-sufficient sort of energy for the vehicle, and have had to use all sorts of incredible ways. I just cannot wait to see the movie about this, which I hope comes soon enough. But going back to Cairn Lodge, where it's located is just sort of south of Glasgow, where there's an abundance of EV charging, not even just on the motorway network there. And in fact, once you cross through Glasgow, it becomes incredibly difficult to charge. So I reckon somebody here has fully invested in this, not at the expense of Cairn Lodge. That'd be my guess, because there is so much battery technology out there, including, I was just meeting this week with Immerser, who are the Southwest-based battery company, who have been doing this for ages, using a small connection to fill up a huge battery and allow charging to come off of that big battery. It's not new news, but I'm just curious why the decision around hydrogen was made, because even Toddington Harper's latest episode on our podcast explains very, very well how hydrogen is a bit of a waste of time, and he himself was an investor and an early mover on the case. So I listened to that, and then it just makes me wonder why people would, unless it was some kind of well-placed revenue share commercial arrangement that made it a trial. That's the only reason I can think of Cairn Lodge doing it.
Loads of wonderful people have joined us on the call this morning. Dan Hawkes has said, "Morning all. Apologies for being late. Was wrapping up a big smile to send to Sam for Christmas. I suspect that's for you to use, my friend, as opposed to be in receipt of."
Oh, I misread that.
No, everyone always says you look so grumpy. It's just such an unfair judgment.
Oh, I'll try and smile more. Sorry, Dan.
He does smile, really. And one of the wonderful things about Sam is that, he does have a very serious side to him, and he loves to inquire, not because he just wants to challenge, but because he wants to understand. Speaking about understanding, we bring Paul Kirby back into the room. Okay. You've just spoken to Mike Potter at 3TI. Go.
Mark Potter.
Mark, my apologies.
Chief Technical Officer. The standards for CCS DC vehicle to grid are now signed off. There is an expectation that by the time this project happens, that there will be vehicles available to meet that CCS requirement, because the standards are now signed off. Bear in mind that this guy is very well connected, ex-JLR. I'm not saying JLR are bringing something, but he's very well connected, and they've put the proposal to the government. They're not working directly with any particular manufacturer at the moment, but the whole purpose of the project is to develop those CCS standards. So whether or not they sort of tap into the vehicles themselves, and because bear in mind this is a trial, right? So this is not mass rollout, but it's taking some vehicles and maybe adapting the vehicles themselves to be able to take the power out of the vehicles, but they will be working with CHAdeMO. I love that Sam is now frowning and pulling faces about somebody doing rather than thinking. But anyway, it's
all good in 2 years, but nevertheless, it's really good. Yeah. No, it's all good. I'm not frowning. It's good. I'm a massive proponent of these V2X, but the vehicles, there are no vehicles then, really. So we've got to increase the number of vehicles that have the capability in order for that technology to be viable. So long play, it's great. I'm not knocking it at all. It's really, really good. But it's not going to set the world alight overall, is it? But at the same time, it's progress. So we've got to crack on.
So the first light bulb wasn't going to set the world alight. Oh, it's just a light bulb. It's one light bulb. What's that?
It literally did.
I know it literally did, but that's my point. It started with one light bulb.
Yeah, I was thinking that, John. Moving on. Yeah. Moving on.
The EV Café, spiky since 2020. Data from the Association of Fleet Professionals revealed that tyres fitted to EVs are being operated by fleets are not lasting as long as those on petrol and diesel cars. On average, it found that EV tyres lasted 6,350 fewer miles than those fitted to petrol or diesel cars. The first tyre change for electric cars has taken place at 18,000 miles and 551 days old, compared to 24,500 miles for hybrids, and 24,335 for petrol and diesel cars. So they're getting another 7,000 miles almost out of traditionally fueled vehicles. The research also shows that on average, 2/3 of an EV's maintenance budget was taken up by the cost of replacement tyres. Sam, what would be the reason for this?
Well, it seems fairly conflicting with other bits of information that come out over the years in terms of tyre wear on electric vehicles. But I guess it's probably the way that they're driven, and possibly the weight of the vehicles is slightly higher than those of the diesel or petrol counterparts, not massively, but slightly. So I guess those are components. But again, it's two things really that spring to mind. One is you said 2/3 of the maintenance. That sounds like a lot, but of course it's 2/3 of a very small number because maintenance in electric vehicles is so very, very light. So that's one thing to note. And the other one is that these things can often be isolated and looked at as an individual statistic. But what you've also got to tie in with this is brake wear. So if it's an environmental consideration that tyres are potentially wearing out faster in EVs, what about the tyre wear and the brake discs and everything else, which also are a contributing factor in that wheel fact that you don't use brakes anywhere near as much in an electric vehicle. So I would like to see the two things compared. Someone's ringing. I'd love to see the two things compared: brake wear, tyre wear combined as a statistic, as opposed to individually looking at one thing.
Really interesting comment from a LinkedIn user unnamed who says the second change of tyres takes much longer on average. People are very excited when they get their first EV, so they go out and burn rubber. Is that you, Sarah?
Yes.
Well, I was about to say that. There was a study done about the fact that because driving EV is so lovely, lots of people do it and they drive it like they stole it. So I do agree that will wear off, if pun intended. But you interviewed somebody as part of the EV rally, didn't you, at the race circuit who'd specialised with it. Tell me about that quickly, if you have time.
So Bridgestone have a specially constructed tyre and a harder rubber compound for an electric vehicle tyre. And it does seem to have the wear characteristics of the traditional tyre, if you like. So it copes much better with the strains. So yeah,
that was really interesting. That's available on all of the socials for the EV rally. But what I was going to say about the tyres is, I think because I've driven, and I will admit this, diesel until I drove electric, my tyre wear seems to be pretty comparable, which is sort of 30,000 miles needs changing.
Yeah. I've got the same experience. My Kia e-Niro, I'm at 28,000 miles on it, and I've still got plenty of rubber left on those.
Already? Are you at 28,000 already? Wow.
Yeah, anyway.
And sadly, I can't offer an experience in mine because although I've done similar miles to the other two, I've had punctures which have necessitated changing not only one rear tyre but the other one because the tread difference is different. So there's an element of how long those tyres are going to last without a puncture being involved.
Yeah. And the reality is that funding and maintenance have always gone together. And in the maintenance contracts, tyres have always been upwards of 50% of the total cost of the contract. So, they're now sort of 2/3. But that, as Sam points out, is possibly because of a reduction and probably into a reduction on the other elements of the service contract. So, it's sort of not a story, really, because as to somebody else's point, they're lasting a long time, the second time round. So I just think this is an isolated number used to tell a story that isn't a story.
Thank you kindly. I'm glad I brought a non-story to the table.
Something very sensitive today.
We're wearing John out, I think. Poor John.
Hello. Let's keep going. Global sales of battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids rose 20% versus a year ago as strong growth in North America and China offset lower sales in Europe. The sales of battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids rose from 1.1 million globally in November 2022 to 1.4 million this year. China posted a 25% increase in sales and were up 43% in the United States and Canada, whilst Europe saw sales drop 3% versus the same month in 2022. No big surprise that Tesla Model Y, Tesla Model 3 are at number 1 and 2. However, hold on to your hats. BYD Song Pro, BYD Atto 3, BYD Dolphin, GAC Ion S, Wuling Hongguan Mini EV, GAC Ion Y. Then we get a European car, VW ID4, and then finally, to close out the top 10, the BYD Seagull. So what's that? 7 of the top 10 are Chinese manufacturers. New geography areas such as Indonesia, Thailand, Turkey, Australia, and Brazil are witnessing a significant accelerated adoption. It's all very interesting, and I'm afraid, Paul, it's all been a bit car-centric this week. I do apologise.
Well, no, let me tell you. So the top seller in the UK, and I can only give you the UK, not the global numbers, is the Vivaro Prime EV, and then there's the Varo Dynamic is number 2, the e-Transit is number 3, the e-Vito is number 4, and the e-Deliver 9 from Maxus, the first Chinese vehicle, is number 5. So there's a little bit of balance for you.
Yeah, and John, just to point out, Model Y is the largest selling electric car. It's also the biggest selling car globally,
yes,
which is incredible.
Evie Bino says, the trouble with the Chinese car, 45 minutes later, you want another one. How rude. So we're going to close this out because it's late and 10:31 and all that stuff. Paul, what are you doing for Christmas?
I'm picking up my mum from here today, and we are whisking back home. We've got a vast array of waifs and strays turning up on Christmas Eve. We've got a quieter Christmas Day, and then all the waifs and strays return again for Boxing Day. So it's a fabulous few days of peaks and troughs in food, drink, and people.
So you'll be spending it in a van then, somewhere on the side of the motorway,
yes, hiding
on your own.
Quietly in a darkened room, indeed.
Sarah, Sam, what are you doing? Are you meeting up or are you doing separate things?
Bit of both. We've got separate. I've got my daughter, and then I'll be hoping to see Sam in the afternoon on Christmas Day. But the rest of it's basically family. And Paul, I'll be waiting on that in front of the curtain mass photo that I do so love every year when you get your family all together. It's so sweet.
What? In front of the curtain?
Yeah, I don't really care about your curtains. It was more just that your family are all together. I'll send you the pic that you took and put on Facebook.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, okay.
She does this to me all the time, Paul.
She has a memory like a vice. It's unbelievable. Right.
What? A memory like a vice?
Well,
does that make sense?
I meant the grip. You know, the grip of a vice.
not vice that you're thinking of, is the
vice
not
like
Miami
grip
Vice
on facts. Anyway,
actually, that's the TV program you should be in, Miami Vice. There we go.
Sam Johnson. Right, if you've got any clean transport PR or news stories you'd like us to cover, please send them to us at hello@evcafe.org. Next Friday, 29th of December, we will be doing a review of the year, the 5 big stories. We'll have an update. We'll see if we can get Sam a big smile by not covering any hydrogen stories next week. It's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from them. This has been an EV Cafe production brought to you this week in partnership with Zaptec, providing leading edge green tech chargers. Other sustainability news services are available, but this is just fun. The EV Cafe is truly blessed to be partnered with the AA, Plug Me In, Pay Through, Zaptec, Spiri, Hydrock, Interval, Kersha, Dynamon, and McIntyre Hudson. We are the EV Cafe, supporting the transition to clean transport. Enjoy the rest of your day, your festive break. Please look after yourselves, and if you need anybody, call Paul. Until we see you next Friday, take care. Bye.
Bye. John, what?
Sam, you were saying?
Well done, John.
Am I the only